This is a production of Cornell University.
Hi. Whoa. All right. Welcome to the 2012 Cornell MFA graduation reading. 2 years ago, 8 writers received a phone call letting them know that they had been admitted to Cornell's MFA program in creative writing. By a remarkable coincidence, all 8 of those people are literally gathered here at the front of the room, prepared to read selections from their work. Speaking as one of those 8 people, I'd just like to say that it's been a great 2 years. We've gotten the chance to write and to teach and to have lunches and dinners with some legendary writers, to work at one of the country's foremost literary journals, and we've had the chance to work with the amazing faculty here and to learn from them and to learn from each other as well, because honestly, one of the most special things about the program to me has been the quality of the students in the program. I'm not talking about myself, of course. I am feckless and unreliable, but the other 7 people that we'll be reading today are not only great writers, but just honestly really good people, and it's been an honor to work with them over the last 2 years, and an honor to have them as friends. So, and this is the first time we've all read together in the same place at the same time, so I think it's going to be really special, so thanks for coming out. Before we get started, I would like to thank the creative writing faculty, the English department staff, as well as David Pickett, Alan and Louise Schwartz, and the late Philip K. Freund, all of whom have made it possible to experience this amazing program without going into debt. And believe me, from the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate it. So just one more thing before we get started, please silence your cell phones, either by turning them off or by smashing them into bits. Regarding applause, we encourage applause. We would like you to wait and hold your applause till the end of each person's segment so that there's not too much applause. So I'm going to introduce Alex. He's going to come up, read a few poems, and then when he's done, he'll say thank you or something to that effect, and then you may applaud him to your heart's content. Any more applause than that, it'll just go right to his head and it'll just be a mess. So thanks for that. And finally, there is a reception afterwards at the English department lounge on the 2nd floor, so when we're all done, please stick around and join us for that, because there's going to be some great food and great beverages. So without further ado, let me introduce the first of our readers. Alex Chertok grew up in Rockland County, New York, and received his bachelor's degree in English with a concentration in poetry writing from the University of Virginia in 2006. Since then, he has been published in such literary magazines as 32 Poems, Potomac Review's Best of 50 issue, Gargoyle, Pebble Lake Review, that was the last one actually, and Pebble Lake Review. He was awarded a fellowship to the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts in 2009, where he spent a month and a half in the company of other artists before matriculating at Cornell. He's also one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet, and he has this wonderful vaudevillian cadence to his voice that I often try to imitate, but no one can do it as well as he can. Ladies and gentlemen, our first reader and my good friend, Alex Chertok.
Thanks, John. And thanks for coming today, guys. I should start by saying that when I arrived to Cornell 2 years ago, various people tried warning me about the Ithaca experience. They tried warning me about the cold winters, and they tried warning me about the isolation that I would feel, the loneliness, and how far away it was from New York City, and I'd never be able to survive. And I have to say that while the winters can be kind of brutal, not once have I felt stranded or isolated here in Ithaca. And that's because of the support of the various communities that I found here, the community of writers, all of them smart and serious about writing and generous with their feedback, and the community of non-writers, a lot of whom are here today, and the faculty and the staff. So I feel kind of beholden to them for making Ithaca feel like home for me. So thank you all for that. I've got 4 poems, and because my family is here, and because family seems to be a central theme of my work, I'll read some family poems. The first one is called Clove. Even the incurious sun will slice open a clove of garlic kept too long on the counter, will cut its thick body to reach the green sprout, tonguing out the top. A long green snake's tongue licking the candle flame of the clove. Green tongue, yellow flame, tongs bit. A stainless steel spoon took garlic from a fingertip. So did baking soda rubbed, or salt. In kitchen tongue, a calendar reckoned time. A colander, what no longer belonged in the stock pot of pasta. Some nights, garlic thimbled my father's fingers up the stairs. A fleck tucked under his nail blanketed my room. He rubbed my cheeks with the polished garlic skin of his nail backs, till a blonde, unclippable beard bulbed from my jaw. This was how he wouldn't let go of his child's face before sleep. Touch was surely every father's mother tongue he doesn't rub out. Still, his apron was an engine-greased terry cloth over his arm that stitched his shoulder or split it from his neck. He kissed my forehead, but cursed water that boiled spaghetti too soft. His steely body forked over the cutting board, pulled between poles, paled in the oven's glow. Wood shavings in the backyard once looked like light, javelined through trees. Even the ambivalent sun can tell a sawdust pile from the sun. Asparagus pissed the night of, and corn shit the day after. This was my body, no matter what I willed it to do. Burgeoning scape, legs sawdusted with hair. I started to rub off the spark left by his mustached kiss. Over the sink, his barbasol frosted my palm for the close shave I imagined needing. It clouded the drain. My chest swelled at the storm window. I had swallowed the spooked cat's puffed tail. I was the sky lightning clove. I was the solemn magician who hung garlic in the sill to ward off the thunder I swore I knew was coming. Well, I suppose that this next poem is still about my family, even though this member of my family doesn't yet exist. It's called To My Unborn Child, and it's a villanelle. It's a form of poetry that relies on the repetition of certain lines. To my unborn child, it's your turn to come closer, to come clean. When I open to you, you grow dimmer. It's you who is keeping the world from me. Tucked in coral with the comma of its body, the male seahorse holds a pregnant pause, flickers. My body is closed to you. There, I've come clean. Whole oceans are wombed as wave speech in a seashell. In that sound, you're the far swimmer's whisper. The water's churning keeps your world from me. You're a tangled forest of mist-mangled trees. Should I call you my grove, my roving him-her? Would a name bring you close? Then you'd come clean? Whole landscapes unscroll on my laptop screen. Oceans, seahorses, lush orchards in winter. The screen keeps the world of wet peach flesh from me. You're as far from me as the peach, and as free. Teach me uncaged. Unloose me from beginner. I've made this closed body to make you come clean. It's you who is keeping the world from me. I think most writers know the adage, good writers borrow and great writers steal, which I always take it to mean stealing from the style of other writers, although I try to keep this adage in my mind whenever I'm sitting in the library eavesdropping on a conversation, which is often, it's an awful habit, but I feel like I'm a great writer because I'm stealing from conversations and incorporating it into my own work. In truth, a lot of this, most of this is invented by me, but this is called Overheard from a Phone Conversation. I can't even count. Do you know how many? Do you know how many times I edited it? Edited it. I can't. It feels, try, edited it. My tongue can't move that fast. It's like when I played sax. Well, you wouldn't know. But yeah, I fleshed out my argument. I touched on all the things I always touch on. I do too do that. Is that what when I met you, you told me you were, is that what you tell people? Don't put that on me. See, no, sometimes you can speak. No, sometimes you can speak by listening. Like I don't want to have this conversation. But what? What's the but? Why the but? No, this is serious. Come on. Of course I remember. That was all you. You couldn't keep your hands off. There was a while we were a part of that whole scene. A part of. No, not apart from. Of. No, see, there's the but again. See, no, cuz that's not what they think when they meet you. No, it scares me that you're gonna want that someday. I need you to be clear. No, I'm not. No, I wouldn't. I need you. No, I definitely wouldn't say that. At all. Ever. And the final poem. In honor of Mother's Day tomorrow, this is a mother poem. And a happy Mother's Day to everyone, all mothers, especially my own. It's called In Praise of the Motherly. A gardening glove rests palm down on the boxwood bush. I hear my mother. She chickadee-dee-dees to me from the sill of another city, even this winter morning, as if her hands are here and this glove hers. This is my mother because of her hands, sometimes caked with dirt from the soil she'd squeeze till it bloomed through her fingers, sometimes folded over mine or open at her sides, ready to, sometimes smoothing the dog's ears with one as its paws twitch, as she holds the book with the other, as her petting hand dapples the lamplight on the couch. I hear my mother. She stays awake to wipe my temples dry and whisper that her words don't always mean, that sweating blood holds no water. She learns to watch her tongue. She hones her stroke. This is my mother because her hands curve to fit my forehead, because her hands listen pull by pull as she ropes me up. She buries my bedroom deep in a bowl of dough till I fall asleep, till a warm loaved house fills her voice. A waxing crescent curving, scarred on the right pinky knuckle, because of her hands, skin loosening to the pinch. This is my mother, who chose me. This is the hand-dappled light. This is the water she cups up flights of steps without spilling a drop. This is the 100-story house her voice fills. These are the drapes her hands wrap. This is the fire her voice can fill, or the quiet. This is the nuthatch she augurs. These the seasons that turn on cue. This is the bar of soap her hands soften, and the darkness they overtake. This is the patch of sun on my head, where her touch just was. Thank you. And now, Aisha Gawad. She is a fiction writer originally from Virginia. Recent work was awarded second place in Glimmer Train's October 2010 Family Matters competition and is forthcoming in the Kenyon Review. Her nonfiction and journalistic work has appeared in publications such as New York, the Brooklyn Paper, and Elan, among others. She is currently at work on her first novel about the Arab community in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. This is not in her bio, but she's an incredibly sweet person and level-headed, and I respect her, and we've been good friends for 2 years. Aisha.
Thanks, Alex, and thank you all for coming. I'm going to read an excerpt from my, as of yet, untitled novel. So if you hear it and you have any title ideas, let me know. You don't need to know a lot, but I'll give you some basic background. It's about an Egyptian family living in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, which is a very large Arab American community, post 9/11. The father runs a butcher shop, and the present action of the novel begins when the elder son returns from a 6-year stint in federal prison. The narrator is his younger sister, Amira, and she kind of tells the story of herself, her brother Sammy, and their cousin Luna. So the parts that I'm reading are flashbacks from childhood that sort of help explain what happened to Sammy, the brother. Okay. Jungle Warriors. My brother Sammy found out he was brown when he mooned the bus driver and got arrested. But before that, he just thought he was Ferris Bueller. But before that, before any of the trouble started, we rambled around Bay Ridge like a litter of mangy pups. Sammy dark and lean, his boy muscles like knotted ropes, the leader of our pack. Luna dark like him and skinny too, so people assumed she was the sister, not me, who white as dusty cotton and round all over was always the odd one out. During games, we were like props to Sammy, his 2 runt babies. We played jungle warriors, the sidewalks our rivers, the netless basketball hoops our trees. We whipped past other people on the streets like they were thorn-covered vines. Faster, Sammy would call to us, his hands clenched around our wrists, pulling. Faster. Cars honked and old grandmothers clucked their tongues at us as we passed. Where we ended up was Sammy's decision. The concrete cave under the ramp to the Verrazano, cool and dark and wet like the shell of mouth under your tongue. The abandoned Little League field next to the giant Chinese fish warehouses. The red dust of the diamond was the Sahara, and the broken water fountain a mirage. The median separating traffic on the Fort Hamilton Parkway was the ledge of a cliff, and the cars whizzing by were hyenas. Once, someone driving by called the cops, said there were 3 Arab kids playing in traffic. The police officer who picked us up and delivered us to Baba at the shop told him that this was America, and that in America, parents watch their kids. In the years to come, Mama and Baba would get lots of advice on how to deal with Sammy. From police officers, judges, neighbors, teachers. Sometimes it was to beat, to deprive, to smother with love, but always to watch. And now Mama and Baba wander the apartment like 2 amnesiacs, their eyes lolling around, searching for Sammy, trying to go back to the time when one or both of them accidentally looked away. The first fight Sammy ever got into was when he was 10. A boy in Luna's class called her Bint Qusab, daughter of a whore. Oh, how that girl cried, how she pulled my little hands to her face after school, how I held them there to catch her tears. The next day, Sammy used his homemade slingshot to hurl a rock at the boy's face. Sammy got suspended, and my parents met with the principal, who told them to watch out for that boy who had trouble clouding his pupils like bad memories. Mama shrieked at Sammy for an hour. "Do you think we're in Palestine?" she screamed. Baba took away the slingshot. Then Sammy had to discover what he could do with his hands. At school and at home, Sammy ignored us always, pushing Luna and I away, shutting his bedroom door in our faces. It was only when he wanted to run through Bay Ridge, to pretend it was something else, that he let us latch on. I think he liked to feel the weight of us like anchors trailing off of his arms. He got locked up for the first time at 13, and after that he cut Luna and I off for good, letting us sink back into the ocean from whence we came. Letter to Sammy, age 13. Do you remember when you threw bull testicles at that cop car for fucking with Baba? I can picture you now, in the passenger side seat of Julio's dad's caddy. At 13, the one you were both too young to drive legally. Julio behind the wheel, because third world dads just don't care about driver's licenses like first world ones do. He slows down and you lift your body out of the window, your long, noodle-like torso looking like it might just blow away in the wind. You hold one in your right hand, cold and squishy, its juices dripping down your arm. You wait until you are a few feet away from the Crown Vic. You wind back, and you launch those bull balls, the ones you stole from the freezer of Baba's shop. Julio passes you one after each throw. You twist your body around to better your aim. Bull testicles are heavy. The one that lands on the hood leaves a dent, you think. The one that bounces off the side mirror chipped the plastic, you hope. One lands on the windshield and slides slowly down, leaving a trail of blood and mucus and whatever else leaks off of bull testicles. And it is this image. Oops, sorry guys, papers are messed up. And it is this image of that great big bovine ball sliding down that cop car that thrills you the most. You will remember it as you lay in bed that night. You will remember the sound it made. You will imagine the fat fucker's face as he leans down close to the glass. He will frown. He will press one finger into the ball, mystified. It is only later, when one of his cop buddies comes out to look at it, that he realizes he's been scrotumed by a 13-year-old punk with an Arab butcher father. You imagine the crowd of them, pigs, walking out of the station to watch Officer Fuckface clean bull balls off his car. Their laughter lulls you to sleep. You are happy. You feel a thrill you never knew existed before. It's almost like the thrill of shoplifting when you have enough money, but better, because this time you have morality on your side. A week earlier, you saw Officer Fuckface for the first time. You were sitting in the passenger seat of Baba's Tercel this time. You were on your way to pick up your new glasses, silver with wire frames, the ones you had already secretly refused to wear. The Crown Vic behind you flashes its red and blue lights, because Baba is speeding, or maybe turning right on red, or maybe just driving like an Egyptian. And Baba pulls over on the shoulder of the BQE, gathers his license and registration, and rolls down his window. Back then, Baba enjoyed American rules. He liked the way people wait in single-file lines at the DMV. He liked that they don't haggle over the price of tomatoes. He liked that stores are open when they say they will be. He liked that there is such a thing as interrupting. But he hadn't quite gotten used to lane markers, turn signals, or traffic lights. And on this day, he enjoys knowing what to do when the blue and red lights flash behind him, because it is just one of many rules. He likes that he can pull over to the shoulder, look over at his son, and say, "Shoots, guess we are getting a ticket, Habibi," because he hasn't quite gotten the hang of American curse words either. And both of you know what should happen next. You know about the stern policeman in his little black hat, about paperwork and signatures and court dates and checks in the mail. In Egypt, the traffic police wear white cotton uniforms and doze in little wooden huts while cars a few feet away battle on the streets. If the policeman wakes up to find two men with their cars stopped in the middle of the road, calling each other donkeys and shoving air, he might rouse himself to collect a few bribes, or he might just sit back and watch. Baba likes living in a country that isn't so broken. And when he finds his body bent over the trunk of the car, his hands twisted and cuffed, his head throbbing from where it slammed into the car, he still thinks it is all part of some process. He must have forgotten something. He wasn't wearing his seatbelt. That must be it. And you, my little gangster Robin Hood, you are hatching a plan. You are memorizing plate and badge numbers even as you kick a shin, even as Fuckface's partner picks you up by your midsection, even as Baba whispers to you in Arabic, "Khalas ya habibi, khalas." And Fuckface starts to scream, spit flying. What was that? Speak English, you foreign fuck. You know what you will do later. But for now, you wait until Fuckface has Baba in the back seat. Then you jump from your ordered perch on the curb and make a flying leap on the cop's back like an evil monkey and bite his earlobe until you taste blood. In the end, it was all a mistake, of course. Turns out, Baba looked kind of like this Bengali dude wanted for armed robbery. They let him go with a bruised forehead and a half-hearted apology. They consider sending Sammy to baby booking for assaulting a police officer. But Mama marches into the station screaming NAACP, and they let everyone go. But you can't let anything go, and that's how you end up hurling testicles at Fuckface's parked cruiser. Officer Fuckface reviews the security camera footage outside of the station and prints a still shot of you, ready to launch the third ball, arms bent, mouth open like Powhatan about to kill his first white man. He brings this picture to the school where he sends a team of 5 officers to drag you out of the cafeteria just for show. You are booked for vandalizing state property. You do 1 week at county facility for juveniles because you're a first-time offender. There you begin your Brooklyn brown boy education in earnest. You learn which delis will sell cigarette cartons to minors, how to mark them up and sell them as Lucy's after school. You learn how to hide razors in the warm cavern of your mouth, how to slide it between your knuckles before throwing a punch without cutting yourself, although this will take months to perfect. A gangsta map of Brooklyn begins to etch itself on your brain. Dominicans in Sunset Park, Yemenis in Bay Ridge, Puerto Ricans in Bushwick, Jamaicans in Flatbush. A tangle of alliances and feuds you were only vaguely aware of before. But still, you are ready to forget it all. You are ready to come home, let Mama run her hair through your black curls, let Baba sit you down for a talk about how brown we are. Listen, Habibi, he says, the Arabs, we are like the Asians. We are good, quiet, hard-working people. The blacks and the Hispanics, they are nice, but too much trouble. Stay away from them, and the police will stay away from you. For now, Baba tells you, avoid the white man. Don't antagonize him. Do as he says, and he will leave you alone. These rules apply to policemen, principals, business owners, crossing guards, anyone with a hat, badge, or business card, he says. And soon, the Arabs will be like the Asians and the Indians, and everyone will be friends. You listen to this speech, and for the first time in your 13 years, you are ashamed of your father. The next day, you go looking for a captain in Yemen for life you met in baby booking, a kid named Wasim. You find him sitting on a park bench in the southwest corner of Owl's Head Park, fingering prayer beads and talking into a Bluetooth. Welcome to Arab gangsterdom. Thank you. All right, now it is my pleasure to introduce Kimberly Williams. Kimberly was born in Concord, New Hampshire, but grew up in Germany and Virginia, as her dad was in the Air Force. She received her Bachelor of Science in Psychology with a minor in Sociology and Creative Writing at Virginia Tech, with the original intention of becoming a forensic pathologist. But luckily for us, she decided to immerse herself in the craft of poetry, her original love fostered by Emily Dickinson and Hans Christian Andersen. She received the 2008 Virginia Tech Poetry Award, has been published in Philologia, and has a poem forthcoming in Callaloo. And she is really, truly an amazing, very brave poet and a wonderful friend of mine. So it's a pleasure to introduce her.
Sorry, I'm a little short. Oh, there we go. Is that everybody hears me? Okay, great. I just wanted to mirror the same sentiment that previous writers have said, in accordance to the gratitude and appreciation that we have of not only being at this university, but also just sharing writing and the passion of writing with our friends, our colleagues, the committee, the administration, and a big sort of like, I guess, goodbye for the people that are leaving, Kenneth McLean, and wherever he's at, and Maureen as well. And getting into my first poem. Oh, I'm sorry, I was supposed to say hi, Mom, and thank you for coming. Yeah. My first poem is based off of a eulogy. It's entitled Came 1969. I snuck out early for recess during a bathroom break to flop in a pile of leaves, the size of my hands, the color of my hands. At the cut of her meek wimple, I saw the nun took a souvenir of wet November to prepare for the 7th or 8th war. The nun clasped Brett, dragged me by the fattest braid into the classroom. Before she got the horsetail whip, I reached into my smock to slap her with worms, mud, swearing myself a lively beating. The agent drew the tail past God to lay the brunt on my legs. She had a taste for cane in her tea. She was the hunter of sugar, beating like Sanjay to get the nigga out. At dinner, Father said, "Stop taking the mustard out of the greens, the black out of the fly." I soaked in water and oil to calm the welts, still bound, biting at my legs. The next day in class, I stared at a window's metal bars with flaking skin. I gawked at the corner boys tapping in scuffed baptismal shoes. I stroked at my crochet legs, hidden in tights, eyed a daddy long leg to pluck before a ruler sparked my bone. The nun drew her arm back. I laid my eyes, the black out of the fly, onto the floor. Two teachers nodded in their habits as a knock on the door fattened my eyes. My father came to take his best gal out to revel the pest in his family over candy apples and guilt with boys cola red, cola black, selling pop and dance. They were the boys who left school in their holy cigarette pants and now without a quarter for a gallon of milk. Boys who mended their school whips into patent leather shoes. My next poem is about Black minstrel dancer Billy Kersans. He was very popular during the Reconstruction era. He had this really odd ability to stretch and widen his mouth so far he could actually fit several pool billiard balls into his mouth. As well as he was well over 200 pounds, but at the same time had this really uncanny ability to incorporate ballet and acrobats into his minstrel entertainment shows. This poem is entitled Buck and Wing. I damn near tilt from the weight of my grin. My audiences are magpies prim in brocade chairs. They laugh me up, clouding louder than 2 feet chorus when I fill my mouth with billiard balls. These dimples are self-made. My face a raspberry rolled wonder, my throat shoved in amens that Negro men are a funny breed. I'm the color of your funny bone, fed so many Tomming praises that I can't shut my lips. Here I am, slap, a behemoth from Lovecraft's quill. Here I go, potpourri from burnt cork and melted wax. Here I am, darker than Friday's shadows of whiskey and fish. Years from now, dancers will drop an anvil on my ghost. They will turn their backs to the audience. Some won't even smile because acting pleased is foul. A few will recreate my jig the pigeon wing because it's hard, scrubbing polish from underneath fingernails. There's no point in walking upright. It will draw suspicion. But I am changed to this aristocracy of dance with a voice louder than tumbleweeds and a mouth that could swallow your hips. I am an omen. I am a feathered resistance. My third poem is an allusion from The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. It's entitled To Bucola Breedlove with the Best Intentions. I strode to the corner mart, unpaved roads, ex-inmates, a moat of burgundy glass, the stench of urine, Brut, a pewter iron gate, 2 Corollas, 1 Festiva, 3 Cadillacs, 4 Huffy bikes, butts, empty skull tins, whistles, stares, scowls, behind the church, beside the liquor store, a block from Garvey Elementary. I strolled to the corner mart, 2 pieces of fried trout, fries, cornbread, 1 hamburger, no onion, extra pickle, 3-piece chicken, fries, sliced white bread, 1 pack Newport menthols, 1 liter pink soda, 1 gallon water. I strolled to the corner mart, 2 pigtails, Pangea hair, chalk, scarred skin, morning crust round eyes, nostrils, savvy navy blue shorts, soiled foam green tank. Out she stretched, tugged at my wrist, brown and blush fingers, frayed nails, barren oak eyes, slits on her face, She whispered, "Can I have a bracelet? Can I have one?" 7 plastic bangles, red glitter, $6.50. I gave her one, then ordered my food. The last poem I'll be doing is based off of Carol Walker's an art piece. The art piece is entitled "A Picture Obviously Pertaining to Escape by Any Means." And this poem is called Burn. The last thing I remember was my hand, the faintest yellow from the skin of sickness, my left thrust in a cauldron from a refusal. Bits of me swelled like pigeon peas before skin flattened and spread like dough. On Sunday's sermon, I cried in my change purse, tucked between my legs, bleached in sawdust from fresh white pews. Game and folk stared at my hand, the inside of dog ears and coconuts. Fields even noticed, and whispers flung of me sleeved and lame. So I took my son and we fled across crops, gullies, and dead, passing in streams. Then he started to run lung raw towards a rogue kite a few miles from the moon. It flailed like a sliver of flesh. We clutched its rope, rode the kite as my son's chest billowed, propelling him to the moon. We rode the kite with hands sweetly burnt from the tale of fable. Thank you very much. Next up, we have fiction writer Daniel Peña. He has perhaps the best portrait that we have in our program here. He's a stellar writer. He is the co-founder and fiction editor of Vandal. His work has appeared in Callaloo, Trist, Quarterly, and the Saracen, among other journals. His fiction will be featured in the Best Estate in the Union, an anthology of Texas beat writers, forthcoming from the University of Texas Press. Congratulations. He was a finalist for Glimmer Train's 2012 Short Story Award for New Writers and also won the Charles Gordon Award for Creative Nonfiction. He's currently at work on his first big novel, Bang, a narco story. Welcome, Daniel Peña.
Let me see if I can fix this real quick. You guys can, this is not, I can just put it right here. There we go. Searcy always has the right answers. I don't know how he does it. It's nervous. You guys like my suit? You know, John Murillo, yeah. I appreciate that. Yeah. John Murillo told me that one. I kind of want to tell a little anecdote before I start this. And I'll tell you guys about the novel. I was in the mailroom the other day, and Stephanie Vaughn came in, and she said, she was right there, and she said, "You know, I'm really glad you came. We're really glad you came here." And I told her, I said, "Thank God, you know, I thank God every day that I came here. This is the best thing I ever did." And I'm feeling about that. This is probably the best thing I ever did for my writing. I also want to thank the third years and the first years. Yeah, you guys have been great. You guys are really nice to my novel, and it's really hard to do. It's really hard to workshop a novel. Nobody tells you that. It's really hard to write a novel. But yeah, my folks aren't here today, but you know, I write home to them. These first years, there's something really to write home about, and you guys are great. So I'm gonna miss you guys. I'll see you around. I'll meet you for next year. And of course, my year. Thank you guys. You guys are great. So the novel, this is sort of half the thing. You said we could only read so many pages, so this is my page count. This is 8 pages. But it's first half is a chapter. It's about setting up basically a dogfight. They win the dogfight in the end, so I'm going to spoil it for you guys. And then it's a fairy tale. It's a Mexican fairy tale. So it's called. Well, it's on title right now. So above all other sounds in what is, there's the sounds of dogs, louder than the sporadic rattling of guns, or the wailing sirens in the air, or the idling engines of the Army's diesel trucks. You hear those sounds too, but for all you've heard, there's no sound louder than the dogs, because they're everywhere. You hear their paws scraping asphalt louder than litter in the wind, plastic bags flapping ragged and the glass shard Romeo catchers that top concrete walls. Louder than the bags cut up in the barbed wire, razor wire, telephone wire lines that cut up this town. You can hear their barks and yelps louder than all those rasping bags. First one dog, and then the call and response of a dozen others nearby. All dogs talk with each other. Every dog has something to say, even if it's just hello. But they get lonely too. They howl like the mothers who howl at the bodies of their dead sons. And when they walk, you can hear them clack their nails into the pavement like beautiful women clacking their stiletto heels into the streets. They do it with a solid, knocking sort of confidence, like those glossy wives on Calle Madrigal. They are like us, but they are not us. For all their barking, nobody really hears them, not even the journalists who come to Lote Bravo with their little cameras and their little badges, who take pictures of all the horrible little things in the world. They come to the city like flies come to blood. They push the street dogs aside, kick them with their boots. Journalists like to take pictures of things that are already silenced. Here's one of a pink cross nailed to a pole outside of my house, a utility pole with a live cable on the ground from which everyone steals their power. A pink cross for a woman who's been killed. Her name written in black across the top. This one says, Desconocida. Here's one of a body hanging from a bridge. Here's one of a body shot in a car. Nobody wants to take pictures of the living things, the breathing things. Mexicans are never interesting until we're dead. There must be a dozen pictures of me out there, somewhere, digging up the coffee can that my brother Quao told me to keep packed in the dirt. Here's a journalist who tells me in broken Spanish to move, that I'm in a shot. I refuse to move. He shoots anyway. He asks politely if I can move again. I tell him in English, tough titties. It's not clever, but it's funny. Errasto thinks it's funny. Errasto's my best friend. Errasto laughs across the way. He says something that the journalist can't understand. Atomico is the dog. Atomico lets out a dark, heavy growl, and the journalist packs up and goes. Errasto plays fetch with Atomico to keep his muscles loose for tonight. Our first dog fight, and we're both nervous. Atomico seems oblivious. I'm digging up the money I told my brother Quao I'd bury so Errasto and me can buy our way into the fight. It's morning, so it's cold. The rocks always feel heavier in the cold, and I'm sweating. My skin feels clammy, everything itches, and my muscles burn. When I lean and pull on the shovel, it's like icy fire all over my back. I throw the last shovelful of dirt past the mattress outside our lean-to shack on the lot. When Quao gave him the money, I buried the can in the ground beneath the mattress. The idea being that the more pain in the ass it would be to dig it up, the less likely I'd be to dig it up. Not so. The soil gets cleaner every time I dig. The coffee can gets full with little white squares of paper IOUs that I scrawl down on the side of the can with a pencil. It feels strange, stealing from your mother. I don't think of it as stealing from my mother at the time, but now it's easy to see it for what it was. I was stealing money, the money Quao sent me, the money for our mother's house. That's the truth. At the time, I think of it as borrowing from Quao. That's how Errasto puts it. Would you rather borrow from your brother and write down little white slips of paper and pay him back eventually, or pedal gelatina in a little glass case for your uncle all day while he sits in caliente, stuffing his face with burgers and Sol and betting all your money on the Lakers and bringing home none of it? It's no secret that I hate working for Tio Hernan. It's no secret that he gambles too much. So, which would I rather have? The answer is simple, neither. I'd rather make my own money. I'd rather rely on myself. I'd rather not be here at all. I'd rather go to New York City and sleep with beautiful American girls from the movies with white teeth and straight hair who put out easy, because, as Errasto says, American girls always put out easy. But more than all of that, I want to know what it's like to feel in control. Me too, says Errasto. This is why Atomico is so important to us. This is why tonight is so important. We can make our money with Atomico. Tonight will be our first time trying. I peel the black lid of the coffee can. Errasto puts his hand over his mouth. He's never seen so much money. How much is the buy-in, I ask. 5,000 pesos, he says, almost in a whisper. Atomico comes rambling along. Errasto takes the ball from his mouth, chucks it into the street again. I take out 20,000 pesos from the can, 500 for the buy-in, 10,000 for Cynthia and her hospital bills, another 5,000 for the cop I paid to make her husband disappear after her husband beat her. I'm paying the cop back little by little. I scrawl the number on a little white sheet of paper. This is the most dreadful part of it all, writing 20,000 pesos on a white square of paper. While we're earned, he'll make more, I tell myself. I tell myself this every day. No hay pedo, says Arrasto. We'll win it back. We'll win even more. We'll be millionaires before long with this dog. I've trained a lot of dogs, you know that? This one's the best. Really, I say? Really, says Arrasto. We'll make so much money. You know what they'll call us? What, I ask. Los patrones. Keep enough money for ourselves, give the rest to the poor. I think about my mother. I think about my father. Arrasto says, there'll be so many American girls that'll give you an extra million if you can't keep your dick wet. Te lo juro, eh? Te lo juro. My mom used to say that it's always important to have something to look forward to. And this is the folktale. My father told me the story when I told him I'd be the richest man in the world. There was once a poor man who lived in a shack in the hills, who fell in love with a beautiful woman he knew he could never have. Every man in the city wanted to marry her, even the rich ones, but she was already promised to the richest of them all. When the men would stop her in the streets, they would lavish her with diamonds and pearls, every man trying to outdo the man before him, and this ruined many, many poor men. And however expensive the gift, however handsome the man, she would always say to him, Déjame, pocho. You should know now that you cannot afford me. This jewelry is only fit for the dogs. Do I look like a dog to you? To which the men would respond with silent dejection, beg her pardon, and slink away. And though she swore that no gift the men would bring her was good enough for her, she would take their gifts anyway, without thanks. And this left even the richest among her suitors as destitute as the rest, as destitute even as the poor man on the hill. And this happened until there was only one rich man in the city who captured her heart with money. How much money? Nobody knew. In fact, nobody knew much about the man, except that he was a Spaniard, and that he looked very ordinary, except for the long, waxed mustache he wore, as white as his face, which meant that he came from a certain family in Spain, of certain means, and this made the beautiful woman very, very happy. So one day, the poor man who lived in a shack in the hills decided that he would grow a mustache too, like the Spaniards, but his would be 3 times as long, in effect, making him 3 times handsomer. He thought that this would work, but all of his friends said to him, Pobrecito, you will never woo her. She does not care about looks. She only cares about money, and you have none of it. To which the poor man from the hills said to his friends, I will bet every man in the city the last cent he has that I will woo this woman once and for all, and she will be mine. I bet you all. So the poor man from the hills made 1,000 bets, shook 1,000 hands, until finally the day came when his mustache was 3 times whiter than his face, and all the men in the city said to him, Best of luck, Pobrecito, and sent him off. One man gave him a suit, another man gave him a cane, another man gave him a horse and a carriage to borrow as long as he brought it back in sound shape. Another man even offered to drive the carriage for him. And with all of this, the poor man left, and the whole town laughed, and everyone called him an idiot. When the poor man approached the beautiful woman, he brought her no jewels, but she said to him anyway, Déjame, pocho, you should know by now that you cannot afford me. These jewels, to which the poor man cut her off and said, I have not brought you jewels. Senora, instead I have brought you this horse, he said. She's the finest mare I have, finer than all the rest of them. All the rest of them, the beautiful woman said. Yes, Senora, I have an entire field of them. Would you like to see the rest of my horses? Maybe you could pick one out for yourself. Come with me, and I will show you all of my horses. So the poor man helped the beautiful woman into the carriage, and they took off in the direction of Monterey. The beautiful woman examined his face as they rode, and the beautiful woman said to him, Your mustache is very, very long. They say men with mustaches like that are almost always men's means. And this made the poor man smile. He pinched the tips of his mustache as he looked her in the eyes and said, Look at all of this to my right, and look at all of this to my left. All of this is mine, and all of this is mine. The beautiful woman looked to the left. The beautiful woman looked to the right. She saw field after field, not only full of horses, but sheep and cows too, with udders so full that they could barely move. She saw a field of oranges too. She saw a beautiful mansion down by the river. And that mansion, she said, Is that yours too? And the poor man once again pinched the ends of his mustache to show her how long it was, and he said to her again, "All of this is mine, and all of this is mine." And the beautiful woman liked this very, very much. When they got back into town, she called off the wedding with the Spaniard, who later died of a broken heart. She got married to the poor man in a cathedral by a priest. And so it was done, and every man in the town owed him a penny for their bet. The beautiful woman and the poor man promised to be together forever, through sickness and health, for rich or for poor, until death do they part. And when the poor man eventually took his bride home to his house up in the hills, she brought all of her pretty dresses, all of her pretty things, and of course, all of the jewels she'd been given. On the road, she said to him, "Where are we going? Are we going to your house down by the river? Are we going to the fields with the horses?" To which the poor man replied, "What horses?" And this the bride grew furious and said to him, "What happened to all the things that you said were yours?" The poor man smiled. He pinched the right tip of his mustache and said, "I only told you that all of this was mine, and all the left side too." It was too late for the bride. By marriage, all the jewels became his. Through all of his bets, he won every last penny from the last man in the city. And this is how the poor man from the hills gained the woman he loved and became the richest man in all of Mexico. He lived happily ever after. That's it. Now it's time for me to introduce my good friend, Sally Wen Mao. Sally Wen Mao was born in Wuhan, China, and has lived in the Boston, the Bay Area, and Pittsburgh, Amsterdam, and most recently in Ithaca. She's received fellowships and scholarships from 826 Valencia, the Bucknell Seminar for Younger Poets, and Kundiman. Recent poems can be found published or forthcoming in Cream City Review, Diagram, Gulf Coast, Hayden's Ferry Review, Indiana Review, Passages North, Post Road Magazine, Sycamore Review, and West Branch, among others. Besides writing, she enjoys frolicking in abandoned spaces, eating mangoes and persimmons. That was the first thing she told me. She's like, "I really enjoy persimmons." And illustrating her friends. She says that her future cat will be called Chairman Meow. Sally Wen Mao, I'm sorry. Sally Wen Mao.
Thank you, and I just want to say what an honor it has been to be a part of this program and to know all of you. My first poem is about the vampire cousin of the mango. When I workshopped this poem, some people in my class didn't know what a durian is. Well, it's the vampire cousin of the mango. That's how I would explain it. Hurling a durian. This is the fantasy fruit. It can awaken desires lodged deep inside a person, but stuck like an almond clogging the windpipe. The smell of a durian may erase a child's immediate memories. So I was addicted, of course, not to eating, but to sniffing it like glue, my fingers probing its dry, spiked surface until they bled and I ate. But eating always disappointed me because the taste replaced the corpse-like scent with something sweet and eggy, a benign tang I flushed down with wasabi. For there was nothing much a kid like me could do except awaken to loss and wish for a 7-piece suit of armor. The desire always returns, durian as a weapon of truth. Even if I don't know how to pull a trigger or wet a knife, it is tempting to imagine throwing a dangerous fruit at the head of a person who abused you, who failed you. But this desire is lodged deep for a reason, the pull of forgiveness like a hopeless gravity. And by every means I've tried to resist. So I do resist by taking a spoonful to my lips, savoring the smear, the din of my cleaver, hacking the husk, and all that juice ripping open the rind. This next one is called Apiology with Stigma. And stigma refers to the female part of the pistil in the flower. And it's for my sister, Melissa Way, but it's also for a different Melissa. Melissa, the name means honeybee. And she's right here with me, along with my friend, so I'm so happy you guys are here. Okay. There is no real love in the apiary. Hive mentality. 1. Fatten until you reign your country's minions on a throne of propolis. 2. Copulate until you explode with larval broods. Honey makes me sick, and so does the queen bee. Even in sleep, I see the arrows point at the drones stuck to the ceiling, sparkling spastically like the sequins on a girl's yellow prom dress. Some girls pray to be queen. They think, wouldn't it be terrific to be wanted? Wouldn't it be terrific to be stroked and adored, to lose your virginity in the glorious aftermath of royal jelly? Wouldn't it be terrific to roost, rest, be the envy and the mother of all? But one girl turns the other way. At lunch, she eats green tea mochi at the edge of the field, scouts unpopulated places, a lemon tree, a barberry bush. Dreading assemblies and cafeterias, she ducks under the library's front steps, smuggling field guides or vintage National Geographics with covers of jewel beetles and capybaras, counting the minutes until recess is over and biology begins. The price of sincerity. When the honeybee shucks the anthers from the camellia, an anthem begins. It is a slow and painful soprano. It screams from deep inside its ribs. It may be a blues, an aria, an index of heartbreaks. It may break 1,000 mirrors before the pollen descends like snow on a faraway field. Finally, the bee pollinates the stigma. The girl curse sounds like that, a drone of flaws, announcing each maladaptive limb, freckle, each admittance of shame. How does the bee battle this monster? It is known that Japanese honeybees grow immune to the vicious Asian giant hornet by laying a trap. 1, lure him into the threshold of an open hive. 2, besiege him. Surround the saboteur with a wall of impenetrable bodies. 3, vibrate until the temperature reaches 115 degrees Fahrenheit. 4, he will die from the heat and carbon dioxide. A dragon defeated, his limp body plummets. I don't teach my girls to brave the violence of sun, suns, or stings. When resources run out, don't just sit there and behave. Abandon hive. If the hornet breaks the heat net, save yourself. Abandon yen, abandon majesty, spit the light out. It sears you so. I'm going to read 2 sections from a poem called Migration Suite, and the epigraph is from Myung-Mi Kim, and it's, the place I'm from is no longer on any map. 2, Land's Pull. Half-dressed in shutters, the girl could be me, but it's my mother. Happy Mother's Day, y'all. Tonight, she thirsts for bells, gnaws bitter melon, sings midnight in Moscow. Ambrosia, radios crunching throats. Across the red sorghum, the country eating her alive. Boots, neon jacket, red shoestrings and all. Outside her palanquin, a pulmonary coaxing, singing orbiters. Hooves can't stir and horses wait. Amaranthine and dead earth swarms with foxfire. The train rumbles by without her. She ducks inside the theaters where the soldiers dressed as bridegrooms come at her. The gag in her throbs bigger. She's certain she may be the hostage they're looking for. She's thinking if she just surrender, they'll move her, mar her, marry her across the land of blind sharpshooters through the airtight sockets of winter. As long as dawn breaks liquid as lucre and she can catch that last express home. As long as she can sprint through sorghum taller than any horizon she has known. This section is called Preface to My Unraveling. I ruined my body for a rest of life. To be in exile, the threnodies burning. The nightmare's hammer of wearing a diaper, losing teeth, everlasting nosebleed, spindrift oozed from molars. A caper of erasers chars these passageways. Junk in the organs, kinks clone the thyroid, diaphragm punctured like paper lantern blown out. I headed north with wrecked kidneys, afraid to see a doctor, afraid to empty pockets. Roadkill awakens in carbonated rain. Cirrus glowers with rumors. In the hour of the police officer's question, my hitchhiker mouth is stranded. Here are my blood-stained sneakers. Here is my wing made of wood and wire. Am I a crying vetch in an animal's disguise? How can I bear the flaws I don't know? Okay, and I'm going to read one section from this poem called Blood Vernissage, and this is about a case back in 1992 where there was a child who was running on the streets, running away from this murderer, and the policemen who found him were basically returned him to his murderer, and this is about that. And I'm going to ask Kimberly Williams to come up and read the second part with me, with my good friend Kim. Okay, so this section is called delouse, and that's a verb used by police officers as an inside joke to cleanse after being in the company of persons deemed unsavory. In cities full of pigeons, animal remains cannot explain the gored or ignored. At dusk, the ignoble police the streets, their searchlights dimming with every question. Who was he? Murder victim number 13? No, we refuse to identify him according to how...
Yes, officers. Balzac and Gabberge were uncomfortable, embarrassed to be looking.
He died. His name was Conorak.
A hairless, brown thighs, blood running down what they thought were a man's calves.
As a 3-year-old, he rowed a canoe across the Mekong River. Warm daybreak gathered gnats. His father bent over oars. Mother.
Despite basic anatomy that would inform them, these legs belonged to a boy barely past puberty.
Feeding each child sleeping pills so they wouldn't stir the sentinels awake. Each gust tasted bitter like medicine.
Drugged and dazed, hole drilled through his skull, they stood in a murderer's apartment where...
In that vessel they approached the shore, a spectral cadre crossing the delta.
In the next room, a cadaver reeked. One joked, "My partner needs to get deloused at the station."
March 1979. Thank you, Kim. The long night was ending. If he woke, he would have seen the Fata Morgana in the bloodline of the border. Instead, a dragonfly landed on his eyelids, whirring. And the last one, this is from a longer sequence about this wannabe ninja assassin girl. Okay. A 4-day flash flood, and already there's carrion in this dojo. Mentor, Why too exhausted to pick up all the drowned blackbirds? With each comes a trail of skinks. Don't let me learn your secrets for nothing. Fight for them. Charge a price. The first time something snapped inside me, I found a crowbar in the woods. My emotions stunk of excess, so pure they could only belong in the gutter. Later, I happened upon a young spruce, saw myself in its sprigs, swung once and missed, swung twice and the needle shook, left a scar on the bark. How I shuddered afterwards, remembering my only childhood friend whose name was Shiva, after the destroyer. That day, I adopted her name, picked ticks out of my hair, punched stone until my knuckles bled chalk. In this rooster sunrise, let me believe all fantasies. Outside our dojo, the sun lifts the landscape, a blindfold of gauze. The yew trees have eyes. Mentor, don't let me give up, no matter how frightened I sound. Teach me ambush, how to mercy kill, how to cut with my hands clean. If only my father could have seen me then, beating the shit out of thugs like the son he never had. It was so easy to deflect their bulk, to dart, shoot, set traps for their behemoth shapes, boulders that would crush me if not for my girl's grace. Inventory of fear, memory, disturbance, the speed of blood when the skin is cut. To think that the first time I opened a physiology textbook, I was met with an image of a cow's red, pulpy heart. I didn't sleep. My trauma lasted for days, afraid that such an organ could also beat inside me. Thank you. Thank you. And our next reader is Sam Nam. He is also a ninja assassin. He is, but he's not aspiring, you know, unlike that girl. So in addition to that, he has worked in the film business as a story analyst and as an assistant. His screenplays have placed highly in contests such as the Austin Film Festival, the Final Draft Big Break Screenwriting Contest, and others. Before turning his attention to prose, he had a screenplay in development at Sony Pictures and worked as a professional poker player. His fiction has appeared in Analemma Magazine, Night Train, Smoke Lawn Quarterly, and more. It's my honor to introduce Sam.
Thank you, Sally. I think my lucky stars every day that I was accepted to Cornell. It's been a terrific experience, and I love my cohort. I was thinking about reading a portion of my thesis, which is a novel, but it's just so dark and depressing, I didn't want to put you guys through that. So instead I'm going to read this little short story. It's called Do Something Anything. Even though it will never happen, the creep wants to hug the new gal. He wants to hug her because she looks sad. She looks like she's going to quit or eat pills or sleep with someone in accounting. He watches her every day, and every day she eats alone in her cubicle. Her friends never call. Maybe she has no friends, he thinks. She just started here. She's the new gal. Around 3 o'clock, she hides in the bathroom for 17 minutes. She probably thinks no one notices, and no one really does notice except for the creep, because he studies her. She's his science. Valentine's Day arrives, and the office explodes in pink bouquets, but the new gal's workstation remains a decimated battlefield of crumpled up post-it notes and tip-chewed pens. Seeing this, the creep rushes into the new gal's cubicle and offers her a piece of gum. She shakes her head. It's not her flavor. The creep thinks she's on the verge of doing something rash because her life has not gone accordingly. A few years ago, she probably had big plans, but now she's here at this job, doing this work. What a laugh. Her failure makes him happy, though, because he feels like a failure, too. He can cheer her up with his love, but he doesn't mention these things to the new gal because he's sure these sentiments will fail. All his hints have backfired. He told her he likes her quirky smile. She covers her mouth now. He told her he likes the way she squeezes the bottom of her chicken wrap like it's a tube of toothpaste. She only eats salads now. He told her he enjoys listening to her shoes clap against the tile because it reminds him of Spanish dancers. She doesn't walk by his cubicle anymore. He feels restless. He comes up with stupid reasons to talk to her. Did you see that the copier is jammed again? You didn't. Well, it's jammed. So, if you need to make copies, you should go downstairs. You're welcome. I'm here to help. Can I kiss you? He never said that last part, but he wishes he could. He wishes many things. He wishes he could save her life. One night, he experiences a vivid dream of this very wish. In this dream, he is entering the parking garage after a late night of work and hears a scream. It's coming from the new gal. A serial killer is attacking her and there's blood everywhere. The creep jumps in to save her and fights the serial killer off. The creep is bleeding from his wounds, but it doesn't bother him because he's in love. And love can lift cars off babies. He manages to pick the gal up in his arms. He's happy to finally hold her, but all that blood is scary, he thinks. Of course, it's scary to the new gal, too, because she's hurt badly. She's one nap away from a coma. And through her slit eyes, she looks at him and says, "You're going to die if you carry me." And he says, "I know," and he carries her anyway. He runs all the way to the hospital. Patients in the emergency room cry for God when they see the creep collapse to the floor and the bloody gal slide across the tiles like she's at a water park. Nurses rush out of the office screaming for doctors. Men in white lab coats storm the room. Care is administered, transfusions are given, sutures are stitched, and time passes. The creep and the new gal survive, and now they're in love. They want to roll around on the floor and ravish one another, but they can't do any physical activity while their gashes are mending. Instead, they just sit around the house and stare at each other. The arousal is deep and satisfying. It doesn't matter that they look like Frankenstein's monster and his bride. They're in this together. Of course, it's only a dream, so none of that ever happened. In reality, the creep isn't getting anywhere. He has nothing to say or do. The copier can only break so many times. After a few weeks, he notices the new gal talking often to DB. DB is not the man's actual name. It stands for douchebag. The douchebag wears too much cologne, wears designer everything, drives a Hummer. The creep cannot understand why the new gal would even speak to DB. Perhaps his dream about the serial killer was not a dream after all. Perhaps it was a premonition. He must save the new gal from DB's many charms. But when the creep thinks about a battle between himself and DB for the new gal's attention, he feels sorry for the new gal because her choice is between a creep and a douchebag. She deserves so much better. But the creep justifies this war by believing that this distinction, this demarcation between creep and douchebag, is the very definition of all men. They are either creeps or douchebags. And men who are seemingly normal are merely moderates within this continuum. This idea makes the creep feel better. In fact, It emboldens him because now he knows that he must represent creeps everywhere. He overhears DB making plans with the new gal to have after-work drinks at the local bar for later that night. The creep can't let this happen. So he goes to the liquor store during his lunch hour and buys 3 bottles of vodka. He gives the booze to the new gal and says he won the vodka in a liquor promotion, and since she loves drinking so much, she should just stay home tonight and get drunk by herself. She gives him a weird look, thanks him, and then declines the booze. When he overhears the new gal talking to DB about their shared love for animals, the creep goes out the next day and purchases a life-size teddy bear and places it in her cubicle chair. He waits eagerly for the new gal's arrival, and when she shows up, she sees the bear and screams, a terrified scream. She believes someone is playing a cruel joke on her because when she was 10, a grizzly killed her father. Ever since then, she has been bear-phobic. The Human Resources Department sends out a memo to all employees stating that misbehavior in the workplace will not be ignored, and that practical jokes that prey upon the childhood trauma of its employees will now be grounds for termination. The creep knows that this memo was directed toward him. He also knows that he has lost his war against DB. And it doesn't even matter when he realizes that DB was never actually in a war with him. DB is actually a happily married man with 2 kids, and the new gal is actually his wife's cousin. It doesn't matter that DB was the one that got the new gal this job in the first place, nor does it matter that DB and his wife have been showing the new gal around town to make her feel comfortable in her new career. None of that matters because DB is more than a person. He is an idea. He is everything the creep is not. So in a last-ditch effort, the creep decides to do something shocking and belligerent, just the way he used to show his love in elementary school. If he can't make the new gal love him, he can at least make her hate him with a visible passion. He has no plan, however. He just enters her cubicle and bumps into her chair. She gives him a dirty look. He ignores her and steals her stapler. She complains. He tells her to shut up. She says, "No, you shut up." He says, "What are you, 9 years old?" She stands and demands her stapler back. He blows her off. She grabs his arm before he can leave, and even though he could easily escape her, he doesn't. They're talking now. She feels something for him. It's a freaking miracle. He's too excited about their interaction to notice that she's truly upset. He just smiles at the hand on his arm, her red fingernail polish, the slimness of her knuckles. But then he notices that she is genuinely scared of him. He must be a monster, he realizes. What is he doing to this poor woman? So he does the only thing he can, the only thing that will fix everything. He staples his own face. He staples it hard. The stapler goes ka-chunk, smack dab on his left cheek. A kiss of pain and love. He's a protest monk, this will show her. Shocked, she screams. Everyone looks. They tell the boss and the creep is fired, free to do his weirdness elsewhere. Fine, this job sucked anyway, but he never says that. He remains taciturn. His defense is silence. He's like a revolutionary fighting against a sterile, loveless world of adult protocol. He's a freedom fighter sent to the firing squad, and everyone in the office wants to see him squeal and beg for mercy, or at the very least explain why the hell he stapled his own face. But he's too strong for that. He's too proud. He says nothing. The security footage of his self-attack will be a viral sensation. It'll be all over the internet. The clip will get millions of hits, and it'll be duplicated thousands of times with stupid titles like Staple Man or Man Posed Himself with Stapler. The creep doesn't consider this. He doesn't care what anyone thinks of him except for the new gal. He just stares at her as he packs his things. He watches her every movement, her facial tics, her disturbed expression. He doesn't say anything to her, but he wants to. So he looks at her, and with his eyes he says, "I'm so stupid. I ruined my life. I didn't even need a stapler. I love you, never forget me." Thank you. It's a true story, actually. They were never able to get the staple out. So I'm introducing Nicholas Friedman. What do I say about Nick? Nick Friedman, you know, he's okay. You know, originally I was going to stand up here and just make fun of him for 5 minutes, but I figured that would be weird, you know, because he's like sitting right there. But you know, the one thing that I really love about Nick is that he can take a joke. And I'm not going to read his bio. You guys have the bio, and you can read it. You can see that he's been published extensively, that he's very bright, he's very passionate about his craft, and he's a wonderful writer. But what the bio doesn't tell you is what I've learned over the last 2 years, and that he is a wonderful, wonderful guy. And that's probably the best compliment I can give. So, come on up.
Well, thank you for all coming out. I think some combination of conventional wisdom and Sam's amazing reading served to prove that shorter, funnier readings just work better. And so I'm sorry. But I'll only read 2 poems. The first one is fairly long. It's in 7 sections, and I'll indicate the change in section just by a slight pause. And it concerns a Scandinavian man who came to the United States to work in a mine, and hopefully the rest is apparent from the poem. But it begins with an epigraph, which is actually from his gravestone inscription at Angels Camp in California. Blacksmith and strongman of the Mother Lode, 1902 to 1937, when he began a 20-year career with Barnum Bailey Circus, featured internationally as the world's strongest and most tattooed man. Rasmus Nielsen. I dreamed in ink, clouds pinned against the endless belly of the sky, a blot of orange weeping through its border, and woke to cold, damp gauze unraveling from my skin. In time, I started drawing odd looks on the street, so what couldn't be hidden, I forced further into view. I figured crowds would pony up to see me inked like Omi and Costentinus, that self-bred lot. Nights, after the forge was cooled, tools hung, I tracked down Brooklyn Joe, a good man, clever with the needle, who darkened the canvas of my flesh with dragons and geishas, redwoods on my calves and Christ heads on my ribs. All told, Joe left me looking like a tall Ming vase, a frozen scene that you could live inside for days. My ticket elsewhere, paid in flesh. Come look, come look. Those tattoos formed the hopeful specters of my night, but morning pried me from my ink-stained sheets to work. With crisscross tongs chirping like a cardinal, I drew out horseshoes, 16 penny nails beside the rictus of a forge, yawning its ball of heat. Lump coke glowing and pulsing in that shallow gullet. Working both sledge and chisel, I had no striker, preferred to work alone. damp leather gloves, the ceaseless ping of hammer and anvil. These are the things I can't forget even now, not that I hear the whisper of regret. All that I made from broken springs, discarded chain links rusted and thick as from the docks of Sonderborg, are out there still, and I take comfort knowing that. Somewhere a horse presses its shod hooves into mud. But curiosity is a fickle child, and inked men fell from high wonder when the crowds thinned, wanting more. While Omi filed his teeth to points and stretched his lobes, I forged a set of bull rings, 4-inch, heavy gauge, and pierced my nipples with a drawn-out steel-grade rod, then slid the rings into those burning tips of flesh. Starting small, I wrapped a 50-pound anvil in chains, and hooking it to my chest, I lifted, slow at first, the only sound, the tick of blood against the floor. Breath was the bitch to master, keep the good air in. I ground my molars smooth and clenched my neck to wires. Practice makes perfect. No, practice makes permanent. And this, I figured, was the tempered ease of freaks, that pearl of pain the curious rub themselves against. I worked the auditorium, then joined the Ringling sideshow, that mobile hall of lesser gods and muses. We etched our way across the country's sprawling back and past the whiskey round until the jug got dizzy. Chuffing east through Lincoln, we played hearts and stud as rain dragged ragged lines across the window panes. Near Dallas, the giantess pulled aces on my jacks. The towns changed faces, but the people stayed the same. By July of 1944, a permanence. Breasts dangled from my unseen muscle, Tiresias-like, and the loosed-up piercings swung like cowbells when I walked. With jagged bits of swarf still clinging to my boot soles, I lifted for a drop-jawed crowd. You'd call it art if it were yours, this painting with a shifting frame. In Hartford, I woke early to a reveille of smell, elephant shit, and roughnecks boiling coffee, day-old stuff, squatting in the long light of morning or pissing opposite the tracks that brought us there. Soon, vendors trundled in their franks and orangeade, the sunlight glinting hard against their silver carts. Hours later came the folks who looked to patch the war with the exotic, stuffing their faces with cotton candy and grinning like Cheshires, their little fists full of balloons. There, several gawked as I performed my act. One child screamed like a steam whistle, then hid in Mama's skirts. I hooked the chain-linked anvil to my breast, then heaved, arms spread for balance like an umpire calling safe. Attraction curdled with disgust, like yin and yang. Frida spoke politely from her leather stool, smart in a lace-trimmed velvet dress. Some folks looked on as if her limblessness might lead them to a sacred pity, but she looked back more mystified than those who frowned. Pen pressed between her chin and shoulder, Frida signed best wishes on her portrait with a master's ease. That girl could thread a needle with just tongue and teeth. Looking at my hands, those knuckles fat as chestnuts, I thought of Frida from my platform, but it's here that memory goes dim. The stars and stripes forever kicked up from the bandstand, allegro, perfect, loud. Some must have screamed, some always did. A minor hitch, I reasoned, but as the band piled verse on added verse, disaster rose up through the hope of false alarm. We gathered outside the big top. There, the sad-faced clowns, frowning as if always braced for tragedy, grew into humans as the paint drooled off their faces. One woman dumbly clutched an infant, charred and bled, hair weeping off in wet clumps as she stroked its head. A gust sent flames unfurling east, the band still roaring when the canvas folded, gentle as a swan's wing lowering on those below. Air heaved out like a fevered sigh. The greatest show on earth, the marquee read, untouched. And who would doubt the claim? It all seemed choreographed, red curtains drawn on new illusions as we watched. Coke bottles melted into miniature lakes and streams, those bits of brightness that my mind will never lift. The act forged into blacking slag. We couldn't look away. So I have just one more. That's a little bit, it's a little lighter and definitely a lot shorter. And I think the only thing that I need to say, well, maybe two things, is that there's a reference to Robert Burns, gang after glade, basically just means go off the rye. And the other allusion is to Ithaca summers when fruit flies are hellish. This poem appropriately is called Fruit Flies. In crooked paths they waft through August, pinging from fruit to fruit, gang after glay, then rest on plum or brandy wine to lay their careful schemes. In some, thousands of eggs per day. They curse each coffee cup to sip the cream and pay with life for that one taste. But I, being a man, have countless tries to waste in winging rot to rot, pursuing finer things. The hands of others swat me, rising up and up, a driven little fly bound for a coffee cup. Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce John Searcy, who deserves special thanks for doing so much of the setup for this reading, so thank you for that. John Searcy was born in Dallas, Texas, and worked for many years as an editor of children's books at DK Publishing, where he contributed to such works as First People, an illustrated history of American Indians, numerous titles in the DK biography series, and Ultimate Sticker Book, this is my favorite, Abraham Lincoln, which is believed to be the first children's book to feature a John Wilkes Booth sticker. His fiction has appeared in the journal First Intensity, and he is currently working on a novel. John Searcy.
Thank you, Nick. This has been drifting this way. Yeah, thank you so much for coming out, everyone. I know a lot of you have come from different cities and different departments, and it's really great to have you all here. And also, I know I thanked everyone generally at the beginning, but I'd like to just specifically say thank you to everyone that I've had as a teacher or a colleague in the fiction workshop. It's really helped me with my writing, and thank you. And I don't know if that will be reflected in what I'm reading here today, but hopefully it will. Yeah, so this is just a short piece that I've been working on. Hopefully it's following the short and funny rule. It is, at least in theory. And yeah, no one has actually looked at this before, so I thought what better opportunity to try out a rough draft in an auditorium full of people. So, all right. Let's get going. This is called Smoke Man. I saw the man with smoke coming out of his head walking down 34th Street, and it caused me a great deal of consternation. And for a while, people tried very hard, people in white coats, people behind desks, to convince me that I had not seen the man with smoke coming out of his head walking down 34th Street. But I knew better than them, so even though I eventually agreed with them and said, yes, you're right, there was no man with smoke coming out of his head, in my mind, I secretly believed that they, behind desks, were wrong, and that I, in front of or near or in ambiguous relation to desks, was right, and that I had, in fact, seen a man walking down the street with smoke coming out of his head. And furthermore, that the man walking down the street with smoke coming out of his head was wearing a light brown suit and a kind of ascot or light scarf wrapped around his neck in a kind of jaunty, a carefree manner that one would not necessarily expect of a man with great billowing clouds of purple or lavender smoke erupting from a small metallic slit on the side of his head. And furthermore, and this I had never, even in my most candid moments, mentioned to the people in the coats with the desks who asked me to fill out forms to say what certain shapes looked like in conjunction with other shapes, it was my opinion that the man I had seen walking down 34th Street with smoke coming out of his head was God. God, said Larry, who was my closest friend, who was a doorman on Park Avenue, near the building where my uncle lived, my uncle who I lived with, who I didn't like. I didn't think you believed in God, Sheldon. Didn't think God was the kind of notion that would move you. And I shook my head then and told him, no, Larry, no. On the contrary, God is the kind of notion that would move me very much. For example, the pantheistic notion of God immanent in all things, and the Catholic notion of the tripartite God, and the Jewish or Kabbalistic notion of God whose traces can be seen in the precise arrangement of the letters of the Torah, and the Gnostic God, remote and inaccessible, and the Muslim God and the Hindu gods. All of these gods or notions of God are things that would and in fact do move me, Larry, since God is simply the name people give to that stratum of existence that seems to lie beyond our capability to think about it, beyond, in other words, the very notion of thinking, beyond the outer perimeter of that which can be thought about. So whether you want to call this notion God, or you want to call it pleroma, or Buddha, or the unified field theory, or whatever you want to call it, the existence of this concept, as a theoretical limit at the edge of our thinking is not something I consider available to dispute. Man, oh man, said Larry, whistling under his breath, you've got a lot going on in that pointy little head of yours. I ran my hand through my hair self-consciously and adjusted my glasses. My head is not pointy, Larry. Please don't refer to my head as pointy. Sorry, it's just a figure of speech. I just mean that you're always thinking. Your mind's always working on something. Does he tell you to do things, this God of yours, this smoke man? I grumbled quietly. No, of course not. He's not a cult leader, Larry. Why would God tell me to do things? Well, I just mean historically, the notion of God has been tied strongly to concepts of morality. Thou shalt not this, thou shalt not that, honor thy father and thy mother, that kind of thing. So I guess I was just wondering if this man with smoke coming out of his head was the enforcer of any kind of moral code. A pigeon waddled up to me like it was hungry. Expecting something, I made a motion to scare it away. I don't think so, Larry. I feel like the man with smoke coming out of his head is a little too cerebral, a little too abstract to be concerned with the social peccadillos of a race of bipedal primates. I mean, honestly, if you were God, if you were the unbegotten archon, of which all human thought is the merest shadow of a splinter, of a glimpse, of a reflection, would you be terribly put out by the fact that a schoolgirl in Sacramento was being insolent to her mom? Larry shrugged and opened the door for Mrs. Moresby, who owned a cat to which I was allergic and had never seen. Well, I don't know about Sacramento, but it seems to me like he's a pretty shabby god if he doesn't have some kind of bearing on human affairs. I mean, what are you saying, Sheldon? That your belief in this god doesn't require you to modify your behavior? You can just go around killing puppies? He lets you do whatever you want? I sighed and watched the taxi cabs drifting up and down Park Avenue, and the people coming and going from the doors of the buildings, and the pigeons shuffling around by our feet with a kind of plodding intransigence, as if too fat or embarrassed to fly. I just don't think it's the kind of thing he cares about, I said, but feeling, for a moment, unsure. Later, I went home to my uncle's. He was in his study on the telephone, as he often was at this time of day. I went into the kitchen to make a sandwich. As I spread the mayonnaise carefully onto the whole wheat bread, folded the turkey, ripped pieces of lettuce off the stalk, I listened to his conversation and kept listening to it as I ate my sandwich, sitting on my stool, leaning against the marble counter, chewing slowly, methodically, and continued to listen even after I was done. "It's been like this ever since his father died," said my uncle. 5 years ago. 5 years ago this month. I've sent him to every doctor in the city, and he doesn't get better. He just doesn't get better. I've tried drugs, sure. We've tried all kinds of drugs. The problem is he won't take them. Or he takes them and stops taking them. He'll say he's taking them, but he won't take them. He won't really take them. I know. Exactly. I want to help, I do, but it's too much, you know? He wakes up screaming in the middle of the night. He gets violent sometimes, breaks things. He threw his shoe through the television the other day. $1,300 television, destroyed, in the dumpster. He was mad that I disrupted his experiment. I don't know, something in the pantry, the genetics of mold or something. The whole shelf was infested with ants. And on top of that, I've got trouble at work. I've got these headaches that won't go away. Sometimes I just don't know what to do. When he was done talking on the phone, my uncle came out to the kitchen. He paused in the doorway like he was surprised to see me. "Sheldon, hi. When did you get home?" "About 20 minutes ago. I was talking to Larry down the street." My uncle nodded and got a glass down out of a cabinet. "You're not giving Larry a hard time, are you? He's got a job to do. He doesn't need you bothering him all the time." "I wasn't bothering him." "Are you sure?" "Yes, I wasn't bothering him. I was talking to him about God." My uncle filled his glass with ice and then scotch from the half-gallon bottle he kept on the counter. "God, huh? Well, as long as you weren't bothering him." "I wasn't, I promise." "That's good." My uncle held his head for a moment, then picked up his scotch and started to walk out of the room. Suddenly, I called to him. "Uncle?" "Yeah?" "I suppose I'm a bit of a handful at times, aren't I?" My uncle turned back to face me. He looked suspicious of my intentions. "Oh, I don't know. We've had our differences. I didn't much like it when you broke the television." I nodded and leaned forward on my stool. "And I suppose when you do things I don't like, you generally don't do them on purpose?" "Well, I sure hope not, Sheldon. I sure hope that's not the case. I certainly never intend to upset you." I paused, swallowed, sat upright on my stool. I formed the words carefully. "I'm sorry." My uncle looked at me. "You are, huh?" "Yes, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything." My uncle nodded, very slowly. "Well, thanks, Sheldon. I appreciate that." "You're welcome." "I'm ordering Chinese in for dinner. Let me know if you want anything." "I want the number 5, medium spicy, and a side of vegetarian dumplings." My uncle smiled and nodded. Then he winced, seemingly in pain. "Are you okay?" I asked. He shook his head and took a long sip of his drink. "It's just these damn headaches," he sighed, shuffling back to his study. "I can't manage to get rid of them. My doctor thinks I'm under too much stress at work." I stayed in the kitchen for a while and drank a glass of water. Then I rinsed the glass out and left it in the sink. Passing through my bedroom, I stepped into my small private bathroom, which contained Garfield towels and a framed picture of Heidegger on the wall. Shutting the door carefully behind me, I reached under the sink, opened a box of Batman bandages, and took out the vial of arsenic with which I'd been poisoning my uncle's scotch over the last several months, in an attempt to gradually murder him. I held the container up to the light, watched the fluorescent beam stream through the dark, smoky glass, reflecting through the edge of the powder. Standing there silently, I thought about the man with smoke coming out of his head, and how I really knew almost nothing about him. I didn't know if he would approve of my poisoning of my uncle, or if he'd disapprove, or if he would care one way or the other. And yet, when I pictured him walking down 34th Street in his light brown suit and his bright, jaunty ascot, the smoke billowing from his head in magisterial plumes, always making sure not to step on the people at his ankles, I got the feeling that I would somehow be ashamed if he came upon me standing in the bathroom holding this vial of arsenic. There was a goodness in him that seemed incompatible with low and selfish acts. And even if the poisoning of uncles was not specifically prohibited by any published list of regulations, it still seemed incumbent upon me to avoid it. With a sigh of resignation, I tapped the arsenic out and flushed it down the toilet. I watched the glob of powder swirl around and around like a boat lost in a whirlpool until it sucked away down the tube, leaving only clear, empty water, purified, uncorrupted. Then I wrapped the empty vial in a plastic bag and threw it in the trash. Thank you. All right, well, that is it. We have no more readers. Thank you so much to all of our readers. You were all great. I told you they were great, and then they were, so thank you for not making a liar out of me. And this has been great. And there is food upstairs in the English department lounge. I would like all of you to migrate upstairs and eat it and drink the wine that's up there. And thank you so very much.
This has been a production of Cornell University, on the web at cornell.edu.